Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're tackling something absolutely fantastic and totally doable, cultivating your very own muscadine grapes right in your backyard. If you've ever wanted to grow fruit but, kind of got intimidated by crazy pest issues or complicated care routines, well, this explainer is exactly what you need. Muscadines are famous for basically shrugging off diseases and insects. It's like they have their own superpower. By the end of our time together, you're going to have a rock-solid roadmap to take you right from bare dirt to a massive fruit-bearing vine. Okay, let's dive into this roadmap. We're going to cover prepping soil and drainage, choosing your grape varieties, the 3-to-1 ratio, building a one-wire trellis, planting your muscadine vines, and finally, maintenance, which means fertilizing and pruning. All right, kicking things off with step 1, prepping soil and drainage. Let's literally start from the ground up. This right here is the absolute foundation for our vineyard. Getting this right is the difference between a massive harvest and a vine that just struggles. 5.8 to 6.5. That is the crucial sweet spot for your soil's pH. Sure, muscadines are tough, but for optimum growth, this is exactly where you want to be. Our source material strongly recommends doing a soil test at least 6 months before you even think about planting. That gives you plenty of time to tweak the pH or fix nutrient levels before a single root actually touches the dirt.
And beyond pH, excellent internal soil drainage is quite simply non-negotiable. Muscadine vines absolutely cannot stand having wet feet. Fine injury or even death can happen crazy fast in standing water, even if it's just for a short bit after a heavy downpour. So, if you've got a spot in your yard that stays super soggy after a storm, cross it off your list immediately. Oh, and make sure that chosen spot gets full sunlight too. Anything more than a few hours of shade a day is going to severely cut into your fruit production.
Moving right along to step 2, choosing your grape varieties.
Okay, once your site is locked in, we get to the fun part, picking the fruit you actually want to eat, share, or maybe even press into your own juice. There's an incredible diversity here, generally split into black and bronze varieties. Looking over on the left side of our breakdown, we've got popular black varieties like Sugargate. It produces huge fruit with phenomenal flavor, perfect for just eating right off the vine. Supreme and Black Beauty are also fantastic, large fruited options. Then over on the right, check out the bronze varieties. Sweet Jenny is a great early season favorite that grows with crazy vigor. Then there's Summit and Fry, which are literally the standard bearers for the fresh market because their grapes are massive and just ridiculously delicious.
That brings us to step 3, the 3-to-1 ratio. So here's an absolutely crucial point. You can't just pick your favorite variety, plant one single vine, and expect a bumper crop. We have to talk about the vital science of muscadine pollination. It leads to a pretty heartbreaking question. Why do some perfectly healthy, beautifully green grapevines never produce a single grape? Well, the answer actually comes down to flower anatomy. See, cultivated muscadines generally fall into 2 camps. Some produce perfect flowers, meaning they are self-fertile, holding both male and female parts. But a lot of the most popular giant fruited varieties, like Sugargate, Supreme, and Fry, produce imperfect or pistillate flowers. They only have female parts. They literally cannot pollinate themselves. Basically, they're just sitting around waiting for the perfect match. And because those imperfect vines desperately need a perfect flowered plant nearby to do the pollinating, you have to follow the 3-to-1 ratio. So, within a single row, plant a maximum of 3 pistillate varieties for every 1 perfect variety. That's going to guarantee adequate pollination. Believe it or not, just 1 perfect flowered vine can actually pollinate up to 8 surrounding pistillate plants. But sticking to that 3-to-1 ratio in your row structure just ensures that the bees and the wind can, effectively do their jobs without a hitch.
Next up, step 4, building a one-wire trellis.
Let's see how this all translates into the actual physical structure of your garden. You're going to want to set up this framework either before or right after you plant to protect those delicate young vines. For home growers, the one-wire trellis system is the way to go. It is highly recommended. It's super simple, uses way less wire than those complex divided canopy systems, and trust me, it will drastically reduce your pruning time later on. As you can see, this setup keeps the main fruiting wire right at 5 feet high, with your posts spaced 20 feet apart. That specific height makes harvesting an absolute breeze, and it keeps your precious vines up and out of the way of any lawnmowers or ground equipment. Now, to make sure this whole thing doesn't just collapse into the massive weight of your future harvest, you got to stick to some solid specs. Your end posts need to be 8 feet long, buried 3 feet deep, and angled just slightly outward. For the line posts, 7 feet long and buried 2 feet deep works great. And this is absolutely essential. You have to use an inside brace post. That's a 6.5-foot post set about 6 feet from the end post, braced with a 4x4 piece of lumber. Finally, string a double number 9 gauge wire from the top of the inside brace down to the bottom of the end post and twist it up tight. That tension right there, that's what supports your whole crop.
All right, step 5, planting your muscadine vines.
With your soil perfectly prepped and that trellis standing tall, we finally get to the incredibly rewarding step of putting your vines into the earth. Whether you grabbed bare root plants, which need to go in the ground before bud break in March, or container-grown plants that give you a little more wiggle room, the physical planting process is exactly the same. Let's walk through it. First, dig a hole big enough to spread those roots out completely without crowding them. Second, place the vine at the exact same depth it was growing at in the nursery. Third, pack that loose soil down firmly as you fill the hole to ensure really good soil-to-root contact, and give it a thorough watering. And fourth, now this part is going to feel totally counterintuitive, but you have to do it. Prune the newly planted vine down to a single, vigorous stem, leaving just a tiny stub with 2 buds. I know it sounds crazy, but this balances the top with the root system and forces super strong new growth. Oh, and don't forget, space these plants at least 20 feet apart in the row.
Which leads us to our final phase, step 6, maintenance, fertilizing, and pruning.
Getting that vine in the ground feels great, but honestly, setting up the vineyard is really just the beginning. Long-term success all comes down to a simple, consistent schedule. Think of young plants like teenagers. They are super hungry, but also kind of delicate. In the early spring of the very first growing season, you'll want to apply a ½ pound of complete fertilizer, like a standard 12-12-12 mix per vine. Then, around mid-June, side dress it with 1/8 pound of ammonium nitrate. But here's the trick. Muscadine roots shoot outward 2 to 3 feet in all directions during that first year. So apply your fertilizer in a nice 3 to 4 foot circle around the plant, but keep it strictly 12 inches away from the main trunk. You definitely don't want to burn and damage your new plant.
Now, check this out. During the winter, your permanent framework should look just like this. Once it's fully established, meaning your trunk reaches the top wire and the arms extend out down the trellis, you absolutely must prune every single year during the dormant season. You'll need to cut all those lateral shoots that grow off the main arms right back to short spurs, leaving just 2 or 3 buds per spur. If you skip this, the vine is going to completely overgrow. You'll get weak shoots, terrible fruit bud formation, and honestly, a really disappointing harvest.
Before we wrap up, I want to throw in one final critical tip to avoid a really common mistake. Muscadines produce these grasping tendrils to help them climb, right? Well, while you're out there pruning, you have to proactively hunt down and completely remove any tendrils that have wrapped around the main trunk or the fruiting arms. If you just leave them alone, those tendrils act exactly like a tightening wire. As the trunk grows thicker, that little tendril will eventually girdle and literally choke off the wood, killing the vine or the arm. We definitely don't want that. By following these exact steps from locking in your soil pH to executing that perfect dormant prune, you are literally setting yourself up for decades of successful yields. Seriously, a well-maintained muscadine vine can produce fruit for generations. So the only real question left to ask yourself is, what delicious creations are you going to craft with your very own home harvest? Whether it's fresh snacking right off the vine, making homemade jams, or even bottling a custom vintage of muscadine wine, the power is entirely in your hands now. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, happy growing!